it's time. I've taken it under advisement, and I'm going to start doing a bunch of mini-series with opening systems. And even though I have another London system video, I've been looking at it, and when you take a break from something for a while, you can look at it again with fresh eyes. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first video, and it's going to be the London system with black playing d5. And I believe it's going to be, let's see, it's going to be the London system with d5. We're going to have how to face the King's Indian, how to face the Grunfeld, how to face the Queen's Indian, and how to face the Dutch in the 5 videos in the series. So we're going to cover a couple of the elements, and one of the elements is, in order to maintain and get our structure every time, if black ever plays c5, you need to make sure that you've played either c3, or if the bishop's outside of the chain, e3, to make sure if they take, you can take back with a pawn. So what I'm talking about is if c5 happened, your first move is c3, and this is in order to maintain the center. Because if he takes, that's fine, we can go right back to a system that's easy to play. So going forward with the main game, we have bishop f4, knight f6, e3, and here's our first point to know about how to play this system. Anytime you see black's bishop move, when you see bishop f5, you should think queen b3. That they go hand in hand. Bishop f5 is met by queen b3. So first we start with c4, then knight c3, putting pressure on d5, e6, and then queen b3. Because this bishop has left space behind. The b7 square is weak now. So normally we see something like queen b6, and in this case we want to take, because if we allow black to take after pawn takes, he has bishop c2, and the b3 pawn would be really weak. So queen takes, pawn takes, and after cd, pretty sure ed is going to be the best move. A move like a3 is fine, b5, rook c1, and white has a reasonable position. You're going to look at playing ideas like f3 and g4 in the future, or just slow play with even king d2 and bishop d3 is completely fine. So going back, bishop moves, queen goes to b3. So another typical variation that we see, and it goes more towards the main line, is e6. So knight f3, and now we either see the typical passive move with bishop e7, bishop d6, knight h5, if the computer doesn't lag, knight h5, or a critical variation with c5. So let's go through them one at a time and make sure that we understand what's going on here. One, if they ever play the move bishop d6, the typical move to meet bishop d6 is playing bishop g3. And you need to understand this principle, because if you capture black's bishop, he will capture back with the queen, in effect picking up time. So in this case, on the other hand, if he captures you, I take back with the h-pawn, and it opens up the rook in developing pieces, and we get a better position. So now you even have some ideas, if he's opened up your rook, of playing bishop d3, knight c3, queen d2, castling queenside, and using the open h-file in order to attack in the position. So let's look at if black plays another typical move with knight h5. Again, I'm not too worried about bishop g3, knight takes, h takes, and it's the same type of themes to where we're using the open h-file, and here it's a very nice variation. We're just trying to play for mate if we could get rid of this h-pawn, so we just play g4 with the idea of g5, and white has really easy initiative. So knight h5 is really nothing to worry about giving up the bishop pair, in my opinion, this early. So now, the most critical variation, and what I recommend for, say, my Queen's Gambit Decline players, what they play in this position, you play the early quick c5, c3, knight c6, knight bd2, and this is the key moment. They're waiting for you to commit the knight to d2, that's when they take on d4, because if you take with the c pawn, the knight cannot go to the best square anymore. So typically white's going to take with the e pawn. Then after knight h5, there are some lines that have been going really well for black lately. So the main line is bishop e3, but then after bishop d6, g3, castles, bishop d3, f5, this position's been scoring very well for black, and I do not recommend it for white. I think, honestly, after knight h5, you just go bishop g3 and just get a position. And I have an example game to show quickly that the London system is so solid that even though black has the bishop pair in this situation, white just doesn't have any weaknesses, and they repeat moves, but white doesn't want to draw. He clearly shows he wants to play, and he just slowly improves his position with the pawn structure. And I mean, he completely outplays the bishops here, and it's a wonderful game. And once we get rid of a bishop, we got the good knight versus bad b scenario. He gets rid of his bad pawns, and the position just kind of falls apart. And that was Grakev Masalenko 2017 Russian Blitz. So hopefully that gives you an example. I know a lot of the authors right now are recommending going into the bishop e3 stuff and the complications, but most people play the London system to get solidity, so why not just be solid? There's a great example game showing how you can still do it. So now this is probably the most important variation to understand in the group. If they're playing bishop e7 and playing passively, what we're going for. And again, before I get to the sweetness, the prize, let's talk about knight h5 real fast. Again, we can meet it with bishop g3, and in this case, bishop d3 is completely fine. As we'll see with this position, it's a very reasonable and solid position for white. No issues whatsoever. So after knight bd2, this is the main thing. This is the line that you need to know. So c5, bishop d3, knight c6, and it looks like everything's going completely fine. This is where you need to know exactly what the plan is for white. Otherwise, you just have an equal position, and this is the opportunity to get outplayed. In every opening, you need to know castling and where the knights and bishops are going. The pawn structure is what we're playing around. So at this point right here, you have to know the main idea. And let's see, I've got London system players in the room. Jackson, what is the main idea in this exact position for white?
The main idea is to isn't it just put some pieces on the e5 side or e5 side?
My London system player fell short there. Knight e5. Knight e5 gets the knight out of the way to start our kingside attack. White wants to play f4, and white wants to get the queen over here. So the rest of the play is going to be generated around that. So black doesn't know what's going on yet. He plays bishop b7. And now bishop g3 to get it out of the way. Rook c8, f4, and after h6, bishop h4, and I just gave a few moves of an example game to show you. Queen h3, and we get the rook lifts in, take there, and after rook g3, white has some serious pressure in the position. It's a very, very easy position to play for white. This is what we're looking for. This is the good stuff, and you're threatening, of course, queen h6 here because he can't take back. So one student had a question for me at one point, rolling it back a bit. So as soon as you play knight e5, well, they're like, well, what if they just take, Mr. Tillis? Great. Because once we get to this position, I'm going to continue and repeat my plan anyway, playing f4, and then going queen h5. With this pawn here, it kicks away the best defender of the king side, and now it's even easier to attack over here. So that does it for the first video in the London System series. Hopefully it was enlightening.